All right, our third video looking at making Tic Tac Toe using the 2D list. We've got most of the functionality working and we've refactored it a fair bit and cleaned it up into smaller functions and hopefully kind of manageable code, but we still have some definite problems. For instance, you can play over someone's square and the game doesn't end when there's a win, so there's a few things to fix up. There's no beginning screen, no instruction screen, there's no way to reset the game, so it's missing a bit of functionality, and it also has some serious bugs that need to be looked at. I don't know if I'll look at all of the bugs. There's certainly I might leave some of the bugs for you to work on, but what I'll try to do is kind of hit all the big points. So where to start? I think the thing to do is to remember as you are writing your code, if you find at some point you start to not understand it as well as you used to, then that refactoring stuff we were talking about might be the answer. So I'm hoping at this point your code is getting easier to understand and that you're having some success with improving it. I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's nice to keep things organized in a certain way. So here's all my processing. Here's all my global variables up at the top, and we only have two of them that we're currently using. This one we're not using currently. And then we have our basic processing functions, setup, draw, mouse pressed, and these are all functions that processing takes care of executing when it needs to. So it runs setup, it runs draw at the frame rate repeatedly. So we don't actually call those functions. And here's all the functions we're creating that carry out the logic of our game, whether it's drawing parts of the screen, whether it's figuring out whether there's a winner, and all of that stuff. So let's, one easy one I think to look for is this. This is, I don't even know if I should cover this one right now, because I'm hoping that at least for my grade 11 students, this is fairly obvious what to think about. When we click this, what we really want to do here is we only want to, remember, when we click this, we're assigning a value into the list. So this position here corresponds to this value here. In mouse pressed, I'm determining I'm at row 01 and column 012. Row 01, column 012. I'm at this position through that integer division, and then I'm assigning it whatever value is currently in that turn variable. So if it's 1, it assigns a 1, it flips it to 2, and then if I click it again, it assigns a 2, and it flips the turn variable back to a 1, and that's how we get that. But what we really need to do is just check. We need to check here that it's a 0 before we do that. So in mouse pressed, we need to make that change. Oh, I just reorganized it. So this was like a tracing statement here, this print line. I'll just leave it in there. So all we really do here is add one if statement. Hey, is this equal to 0? And if it is, then that means we can do something here. And if it doesn't, we won't assign a value and we won't flip it to the next player. Okay, so now if I click here, I can't change it. And this is still a 0. Before, if this was a 0, now I should be on, or an O, now I should be on a rectangle. If I clicked again, I would have flipped back to O, but I didn't. So that looks good. Let's click over here for a moment. I might not have done that yet. Click, that's the thing about testing, you have to really pay attention. to really pay attention to everything that your users might do. Your users might not assume that they have to click in the game board, and they click over here and we get an index out of range error, which seems really strange. Inside a mouse pressed, what do you think could be going on here? Remember, we do a division by 200. So if we were between 0 and 200, integer division means we drop the decimal portion. So we divide by 200, we get, I don't know, let's say I clicked here, I'd be basically 100 divided by 200, 0.5, we drop the decimal, 0. So that's column 0. Similarly, 250, 300, I guess. 300 divided by 400, it's 1 point something, 1.5, drop the decimal, we get column 1. Column 2, what happens here? Well, we still get the value. This is actually 200, 400, 600, so we are clicking somewhere around 700. We divide it by, divided by 200. Every time we divide by 200. So 700 divided by 200 will give us a 3, which makes sense. 3 point something, but we drop the decimal because this is column 0, this is column 1, this is column 2. This column, if it existed, would be 3. Well, of course, when we try to look into one of these lists and look for column index 3, the 4th value, and the list is not there. And that we did talk about this in the first video when we talked about lists, that if you go off the index, you get an index out of range error. So you need to, there's definitely something needs to be fixed there. Definitely something needs to be fixed there. And you know, the easiest way I think to look at this and to think about this is just to make sure that mouse X, because right now it's only, it turns out I can't actually click too far in the Y direction. It's only in the X direction that this is a problem, and we just got to make sure that we click somewhere to the left of this line, 0, 2, 4, 6. Our mouse pressed has to be less than 600. So you would want to do something like that. No errors. Okay, so there's another error down. And you should check. You should write the click is on game board. Just if you can write it as short and descriptively as possible, that's always good. And you know, integer division by 200. Hopefully this reminds you why we did this. This doesn't fully explain it, I realize that, but you know, we have to expect that people reading our code have a rough idea, certainly have an idea of how the coding works, and maybe would have an idea of why we would do that. Maybe that needs some more comments, but I'll leave it there for that. Okay, so problem is the win state does not end the game. That's still, oh, I can't click on that because I fixed that problem. So, and you know, it doesn't detect a tie game. It's much better though. Let's just replicate the real issue right now, which is this. Game should be over and it's still continuing. So how do we deal with that? Well, certainly it's going to have to do with this. This will be the last thing I'll deal with. There might be a few more things you want to fix. You want to reset the game. But let's just focus on this. So how do we deal with this? If we know that this is not, if we know this is a 1 or a 2, the game needs to end, basically. So if the find winners is not equal to 0, the game's over. Let's just try texting that. I know this isn't going to get us quite where we need to be, but we'll put in some, I don't know, gray text. Oh. It is equal, it's not equal to 0. What? Find winners. What are we returning here? Did we return anything? Return the grid. Okay, so this is none currently. Let me go back a step here. Okay, let's print find winners. All right, so they're printing down here, and it's checking. Oh, you know what that means? That's a good mistake to see. I forgot to include the brackets for this function, so I'm printing the function. Hey, this is the function called find winners at memory address whatever. That's not what I want to print. I don't want to print the function. I want to print the result of what the function sends back. Okay, so I'm executing the function, and I am expecting a return of some kind. Now, it returns something when it finds a winner, but what's it returning when it doesn't find a winner? And that is none. And none is a thing in Python, and it basically is the thing that represents that it got nothing back, which is, it calls it a none with a capital N. So I could check for that. I said, yeah, okay. So it returns a 1 or a 2 if there's a winner, and returns none if there's no winner. We could do that. So if it's not equal to none, then that means if it is equal to none, then the game is still going, and when it's not equal to none, it's because it was a 1 or a 2 and it prints the game over message. But it lets you continue. But we do know at this point the game should be over. You need to deal with this. I'm going to put a pass there because I don't know what to do yet. But I have a else statement. I need some legal code in there, and pass does nothing, but it makes this else statement legal because at least Python sees at least one indented line. But how are we going to deal with this? Okay, so check for winners. Now, you might not like this none thing. So if that's the case, you could return a 0. You certainly could return a 0 if you wanted. And the way to do that, hope this isn't confusing, is to put a second return statement in here. Some people won't like this. And you have to be very careful about having multiple returns here. But let's just think about this for a moment. If this loops through and finds a winner, then it sends back whatever that winner is, a 1 or a 2. If it loops through and never finds a winner, then it continues on and tries to run the rest of the function. And the rest of the function is just one more return statement where it sends back a 0. So when it didn't have a return, well, it still returned. It just returned none, which basically means it didn't return anything. And we're just replacing that with a explicit return statement where we actually say, okay, return, but also send back a 0. So if you'd rather see it send back a 0 than a none, then you can do that. And this is not equal 0, so that's the regular, that still stands. Here it is sending back a 1 or a 2, and here we have to figure out what to do. So sorry, what did I do here? Why was I doing this else statement here like this? We need to do more. Sorry, we need to do more. I didn't want the else there. We need to do more here to end the game, to cause it not to let anyone continue playing. So it wasn't equal to 0 because it sent back a 1 or a 2, and we want it to say game over. That's all good, but we also want it to stop letting people play. So we can use this game over variable. I'm going to replace this now with some game modes. So game mode 1 is going to be the game is on. Game mode 2 can be game over. There's a winner. Game mode 3 might be an instruction screen. Whatever you want to do. I'll just use it in here. So if it's game mode 1, the game is on. Let's just do all this stuff we're already doing, including like looking for winners. And so here we will set that mode to 2. That means I'm trying to change that global variable. I better do that. Okay, so we've set this mode to 2, and in that case I might want to do other things on the screen. I don't know yet, so I could certainly put this in here, and I'll use an elif because there's only, I'd like it to be one or the other. So okay, so my only change so far is that if I found a winner, I changed it to game mode 2. And this will look a little different. We're going to lose all the, there's the game over message. Oh, we didn't lose it. We still see what's drawn on the screen. I'm going to change that in a moment, but we can still click on it. Okay. Oh yeah, I ran into this last time. We can still click on it, but the interesting thing is that it's not drawing. It's not drawing this stuff on the screen. Let me just include that in here. Okay, let me go back. Let me just show you what it is drawing, because this is a little confusing for a moment. So let me put a background of this gray color. So initially this will look the same. The only thing that's happening here that's different is the whole game screen is being redrawn each time. So for the beginning part it looked the same because we just always drew the background and the game board. But here, now we're in game mode 2. Well, now we're only seeing the game over message. So it is actually letting us click on the game board, and if as a result of that I were to print out the grid, we don't see it happening, but this is hard to trace now because I have too much going on in the print statements here. Let me just, in our, where else was I printing? Print statements are great. They really help you find stuff. I'm going to fix that. There's another one here. That one, that's it. So that one needs to go away because it's in the draw loop and it's just printing out too much stuff for us to follow. Okay, and you know what, even this one can go away for now. Game is over. That was the last part of the game, but you can see I can still add stuff in there. I've managed to complete most of the bottom. Let me change this one. I think it's here. Okay, I just changed it to 2. You saw that change. I'm still clicking and changing inside of the game board, which doesn't seem right to me. So I'm just going to check, hey, is mode equal to 1? Only if you mode 1 are you allowed to play the game or mouse press there. If it's mode 2, let's just, as a kind of test, let's just set it back to mode 1 and like have that game start over again. So I'm trying to change the global variable mode, so I need to do that. So what's that mean? It means we should see the message when there's a win. Good. But then when I click again, we should go back to, oh, unfortunately, my examples aren't very good right now for this video. But of course, what it did was it checked for winners immediately, and it found that there was a win, and it flipped it back to game over mode. Because I didn't reset the board. I guess I'm going to do that and make it a little more complete anyways. But please try to do this code on your own. Try not to follow exactly how I'm doing stuff. I'm going to try to, reset the game. So I set the grid back to beginning because you can't reset the game with stuff in the game board. And that's a global variable, so I better add that to my list here. So we really did end up resetting the game in the end. Win, click again, game is reset. And if I just place, this is the previous iteration, so we're always one step behind here. So there you see that. And I'll just point out too that if you used functions, well, maybe you do want the game board still there when your game over message is there. No problem. Drop that stuff back in there. It's still not that messy. It's not that much code. I think this code is getting a little bigger again, the draw loop, but I mean, now it's handling two different screens essentially. Could easily be adapted now to have an instruction screen. The mouse pressed is dealing with different game modes as well. It won't let you click in the game board if the game is over. It won't let you click off of the game board and generate an error. It won't let you, lots of bugs have been fixed. So this is a much better version of the game. It doesn't have an instruction screen. It doesn't have maybe, the reset button. You shouldn't be able to click anywhere to reset. Maybe there's a button there. Maybe you keep score of how many games have been played and like who's won how many times. All of that could go in here. But it's a much better version of the program at this point, both because we refactored it extensively in the previous video and because we've gone through and started to fix up a lot of the bugs and test it more thoroughly. I'll stop there, and hopefully you can kind of apply all these ideas to your game, and maybe I'll just leave it there.